I'm excited today because I have Alexander Pappas here on the Beyond Sunday podcast, live from Denver, Colorado. This is going to be fantastic, bro. How are you doing today?
I am excellent. Excellent. Great to be here. Right on time, of course.
Of
Thanks for
course.
having me, man.
For sure, man. Bro, so I know we're going to talk a lot about music and all that, but I'm just curious, like, if you weren't like a musician or a singer or a worship leader, like what would you be doing? Like what would be your fallback plan career-wise if you had another choice?
The easy answer is no matter where I end up in this whole songwriting and thing life, I definitely know I'll wind up being a like creative pastor again. I was a creative pastor at my local church for 10 years and I loved it. The other answer is if I was not in music or ministry at all. Dream is like sketch comedy, like SNL. That was the dream. If music was hadn't been the dream. Music was the dream. Second dream, sketch comedy.
Dude, that's fantastic. So you're doing like exactly what you want to do right now. Like this is it. You're just in your sweet spot.
Yes, man. I love it. I absolutely. This was the dream from like 15. It was like I know this is exactly what I want. I didn't know you don't know how it works itself. And obviously the dream is has molded through the years and I'm sure we might talk more about that and kind of not always knowing it would be ministry as music, but yeah, this is it.
So talk to us about your like creative pastor role. Was that like a worship pastor role or creative pastor was something different?
Yeah, so in Australia, it's kind of one and the same. So
Okay.
it's funny to me now when I'm like, "Oh, are you the creative pastor?" And I know I'm the worship pastor. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean anything by that. Just if I ever say this to you, I mean no implication of offending your title whatsoever."
People are pretty
But no, the
sensitive,
way,
we creative types.
yeah, it's true, man. I am indeed. Yeah, so it's like our roles would be you would be creative pastor, worship pastor. It's all your responsibility, which is amazing. I think in so many ways it was really cool in that regard. Like so I was not only responsible for rosters and the worship and all that would happen, but yeah, any creative moment and really like the whole flow of the service. So in some ways it's incredible because it's like man I'm so bought into the flow and the everything in the service. In other ways it is a crazy task. Like I am not only strategizing worship and raising up leaders and all that, I am also like, all right, for Mother's Day, let's get human flowers. What are we doing? So I was from or started off as a youth worship pastor to like and our musicians pastor at that time, and then growing into my last couple years, I was my campus's worship pastor, worship and creative pastor. So I had a staff of like 10-ish people from production and other creative roles and all that,
Okay.
whilst writing songs and doing all this and that.
Totally. So what came first for you in your life? Was it worship ministry or was it music? Like what kind of I mean, I guess, maybe they
It's
coincided
funny.
together,
It,
but
it was like pretty simultaneous is because I grew up in a great, beautiful, non-denominational church, like beautiful people in a small town in Idaho. And grew up going to church, but made that real decision for myself at 15. My youth group went to a youth conference with all the other youth groups. It was called Unite, and they sang like exclusively Hillsong United songs.
the
And that
best,
was,
the best.
I mean, that era, it's one way, it's what the world will never take, it's from the inside out, like those tunes. And I for the first time had like a real encounter with God. And at that event was the first time I was in the room that they gave anybody an opportunity to follow Jesus, like to raise their hand. Sorry, I mean that I was in a room where they were like, "All right, you know, anybody who wants to meet Jesus will or come down to the front, like proper altar call." And I was like, man, I've known Jesus since I was 4, but I think I need to go down to the front. And, really committed my life to Jesus then. And I'm 15. I'm just discovering rock and roll. Just bought an electric guitar like that year. Had my mom's classical guitar that I was learning classical guitar on and everything. So it was like, it really was like a amazing intersection of, I love rock and roll music, and there's this like worship, there's this music that we could bring to our youth group and like do it. So I started serving in my youth group kind of that year. And what's crazy is this October will be 20 years since I started serving
Bro, you're
in
so
church, like
old.
weekend. Bro, I know. Tell me about it. But I don't look it, is what you were gonna say. Is
Exactly.
you don't look a day over 30, is what you were.
Exactly right. So what was the first electric guitar that you bought? What was it?
Oh, it was because I was trying to also play in the school jazz band. So I bought an Ibanez AS83 semi-hollow, beautiful guitar. It actually got stolen a few years back. I was quite
Oh,
upset.
that's rough,
It was a
man.
cool guitar. It was a cool guitar.
So you're starting to lead worship at that time, about 20 years ago. Talk to us about that moment. Were you like, man, I really feel drawn to lead worship, like I really want to lead worship? Or was it sort of a reluctant, hey, man, we need you to lead worship?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I started just playing guitar at
Yeah.
youth, like those first couple years, and it was very much at that point. It was like it's funny when I look back now, but like our thing was that it was led by high schoolers, and so the guy who was leading it before me was a senior, and then when I was going into my senior year, it was kind of natural that I would take over, and I wanted it. Like let's call a spade a spade. I have candidly never been afraid of the musical spotlight. I love performing. I loved singing in choir. I loved getting the solo. I've never been shy. I'm a very introverted, shy person in new settings for sure. But like, hey, Pappas, sing. I'm like, oh, me? Sure. I've always loved
Yeah.
that. And so, anyway, I mean, the long short of it was started doing that, but it was like, okay, cool. Worship will always be something I want to be a part of. I want to do music. And so I'm like, I'll always have a home church. That's my goal. And even from 17, I remember, and like, I didn't go to a prophetic church. It was not hyper spiritual. It was not enthusiastic. And yet I had numerous people coming up to me to be like, hey, you're meant to lead worship. You're meant to lead songs for the church. Like, and my narrow perspective of worship at that point was like, well, Hillsong United's already doing the cool worship, like legitimately. And I had at this point no intentions of, didn't even know Hillsong had a Bible college, and so I'm like, well, no, that's already covered. So like, I'll make cool rock and roll music and play United songs at
Yeah.
church.
Yep.
And a couple years later, found myself at Hillsong for Bible college, and even most of my time in school was a journey of like, yeah, but God, you've already got all these people doing that. You don't need me. So I'll move to Nashville and start an Americana rock and roll band and just find a good local church. And all the while, it's people like, hey man, you are called to lead worship and write songs for the church, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, maybe. No, it was probably in 2011 that I was like, oh man, I think I've been ignoring I've been ignoring the signs for a while. I think this was a really important prayer in my upbringing was I felt called to stay at Hillsong and build the church, but also that church. And but I was like, but God, like you've given me these dreams to travel the world and write songs that would minister to people and help people. And Hillsong's already got enough people. So I was like, Lord, really in a full die to myself sort of way. I was like, God, I'm committed to building your church and either kill these dreams, let me die to myself and let them go
Yeah.
away, or I surrender them to you and you'll do something with it. Isn't it just like the Lord? The next morning I was in Bible college still, and the next day I got a call from someone and they were like, "Hey, can you come play bass on this college tour to India?" It wasn't at all like, oh, cool, you're going to write songs or you're going to get a job or you're going to this. But it was the Lord going, hey, don't worry. I'm going to look out for you.
Yeah.
And it was in the next 2 years, Young and Free started and
Yeah.
all those things. It was like, I hope to maybe contribute songs. I hope to play bass at it. But like, I promise you, I didn't expect to be a worship leader on it. I didn't expect to be traveling the world doing it. But in hindsight, it was like the Lord really was honoring those prayers. And don't get me wrong, those prayers had to happen regularly.
Yeah.
The days that I was like, man, I really want this opportunity. Man, I really want to do this. And it was just like, all right, no, but like you've looked after me this far, you'll keep doing it. I'm so grateful that I had the stamina to stick it out on the days that I felt overlooked and
Yeah.
disappointed. And I'm still here and I still love the church more than probably ever.
Yeah.
And funny that I'm not working full time in a church at the moment, but I believe in the bride more than ever before. I love the people of the church more than ever before, and just yeah, more excited and passionate about building it in whatever way I can now than I ever have before.
So were you writing worship songs before Hillsong, or did you kind of start doing that once you got to Hillsong?
The first song I ever wrote was about Jesus. I grew up like I found myself as years went on listening to everything. You know, Christian rock led to Christian hardcore, which led to non-Christian hardcore, which led to metal and all this. And I had full on emo kid era, straightening my bangs, was wearing the skinniest of skinny jeans.
Do you still
Like
have
that
do you still
did.
have pictures here? We need proof.
We'll have to bring them up. We'll have to scour Facebook, I think.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, man. But like, really, in my heart of hearts, it was like, man, the things that I loved the most was still the Christian bands that I listened to. They really ministered to me growing up more than, candidly, more than any worship song did. Like worship, I found worship music really later. But yeah, it was always from when I was little. It was the Christian. It was Reliant K's. It was
Hmm.
Switchfoot. It was bands like that. And so I was always writing what I now call Monday music, songs of faith, songs that speak to where you're at, exactly where you are on a Monday, but you shouldn't sing them in your church. And then so I kind of made the switch to writing, like wanting to write worship music when I kind of made that decision that I felt, man, I think the Lord I mean, not just the Lord is telling me, but countless people are confirming this is what you're meant to do. And once I started listening, I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to try writing worship music.
What was that like early on? Was writing worship music, was that natural, or was it I have to work harder at this than I do kind of with my singer-songwriter songs?
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
I think it's like once you figure it out, in a way, I'll kind of use this example as I've been writing maybe like intentionally writing worship music for like a year. And yeah, like everything I wrote then, I still remember some that I'm like, oh, I would love to do something with that bridge someday. It's still in the Dropbox, it's still in the back pocket. A year later, we were starting Young and Free. We were just figuring that out. And if you listen to anything we wrote prior to the song Alive, which I'll get to, it all sounded like B-side United tracks. Why? Because we grew up listening to United. Like I grew up listening to United.
Totally.
Everybody that was a youth leader at Hillsong with me also grew up on Hillsong United. Like they were our youth band for them, literally. And, naturally, that's how it sounded. It was such a funny thing that I always really also just loved pop music. I was obsessed with, like, what is Max Martin doing today? What is he working on?
Yeah.
That is what the kids are into. And there was this really pivotal moment at youth. I remember youth ended. We played Take It All to finish, to close out the night. I'm leading worship and it's so lackluster. And then they just play Party in the USA as the walkout song. And the atmosphere went from a 3 to a 10. And it
Mm,
was, dang, man. And it's like, duh. Obviously, it's like, well, duh. That's what we need to write, man.
yeah.
And so, literally, a week later, we went, all right, let's write something that could feel like that. And we wrote Alive. Candidly, I was only writing worship music for a year at that point, but I had been writing pop music for 3 and writing songs that in my heart of hearts, was to move people. And I think that was just a really cool intersection of time. Really, with Young and Free, it was an intersection where pop music, top 40s, was that dancey type of song,
Right.
type of energy that also happened to work in church. It was an intersection of technology that churches globally could experiment with, like tracks and
Yep.
all that. When I look back, I'm like, we couldn't have planned that. We
Yeah.
couldn't have planned it working like it did. It is only the grace of God. But ultimately, I come to this. When I teach anybody about songwriting, I go, there's 3 things I want to talk about. It's melody, it's lyric, and it's revelation. And I intentionally speak on revelation third because, of course, if we're writing a worship song, we have to dig deep. We
Yeah.
have to bring revelation to it. We have to bring something that's true. We have to bring something that's honest. But if I'm being completely honest, I can think back to that early point of Young and Free, and we got criticized pretty deeply that our lyrics were shallow and this and that. And I'm like, I was the oldest at 22 years old when we started. Like, oh,
Right.
like it's all you guys. These guys haven't figured out life. I'm
Where's the
like, yeah, duh.
theology?
Where's the deep? Where's the yeah? Anyway, like, where's the deep dive here? The revelation we had was that we love Jesus, and I think if you listen to that music, you put on that first record, you would hear a record of people that just loved Jesus and wanted to tell him about it. You don't need to wait until you've figured it all out. Work hard at your craft. Work at figuring out melody and rhyme scheme and expand your vocabulary. Work hard at melodies and dig deep into the word. Even a
Yeah.
non worship songwriter, they still require revelation. A country song still requires experience. A country song still requires, man, like, that's relatable. You've lived
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Somebody in that writing room lived something that I relate to.
Yeah.
But all that to say is, come to God with a willing heart from day one, and He'll use it. I am
Yeah.
a living testimony of that. Don't wait to get it all figured out.
Dude, so Alive, just on the topic of that song, it's been just crazy to see. I know it's probably slowed down more recently, but I visit a lot of churches and I've heard that song done from, the mega church setting to the small country church, where they're setting up their multi-tracks, and it's just been really cool to see that song in so many different settings. And obviously, like, in certain environments it probably works a little bit better in a more celebratory place, but the fact that so many churches were attempting to let's dive into celebration a little bit more. And I think
Yeah.
when it comes to songwriting, not every song has to bear the weight of the full canon of scripture. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's okay to have a song of celebration that is just about celebrating Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
pair that in your set with other songs of more robust theological themes. You know what I mean? So anyway,
Totally.
that the criticism is hilarious sometimes. But take us in a little bit more to that era of Young and Free. Like, at that time, were you like, hey, this is going to work, this is pretty cool? Or were you like, we have no idea if these songs are even going to land in our youth group?
Yeah. I mean, we as far as the youth group goes, it was psycho from day one. I mean, we have
Yeah.
an amazing youth ministry with amazing leaders that do set the tone. I'm like, 101, how do you make your worship services feel great? Anybody who is not on the platform, like, get them up front leading the way. That speaks louder than the striving and effort that you put in on the stage. If anyone asks, I'm like, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
Before, oh, figure out tracks. Like, No, get an atmosphere of worship in the room. We honestly wrote a live. We probably finished it 3 days before we were doing our youth conference and doing like a mock album recording. We thought we were doing like a record, but it was kind of one of those, hey, let's light a fire under their butts a little bit and put a deadline here. And so we wrote that. Everybody was stoked. We opened the conference with it. And from the first time we did it, like it was psycho. It
Yeah.
was incredible. The whole room was jumping. It was just an amazing, it's a core memory. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that day. From that moment, though, like I won't name their names because some of them would be reputable songwriters in the industry, but some were just kind of like, yeah, man, like I don't see how that works in church, but it's great that it works in youth. And for us, dude, like candidly, that was like, that's fine. Young people are singing our songs. Who
Right.
cares? I'm fine with that. I'm not mad. So, and then we started doing it in church the weekend after that. And it was like, oh, cool. So we're going to sing Young and Free praise songs in every service till we die. It was like, oh, okay. And,
Yeah.
there was my flesh maybe won some of those days of being like, oh, why I yada, you were wrong. People my age now were going like, oh, I don't know how that works. For anybody listening that wants to write songs, I'll tell you this: we were fearless with it
Yeah.
then, and I think we need a new gen of fearlessness.
I love that.
And there will be people my age and older that will say, "Oh, it's cool. Like I don't know if it'll work at church." And maybe it will and maybe it won't. And even if it just blesses young people and it speaks to them where they are at, what they are listening to, what is is for them, like
Yeah.
it'll make a difference. I think it's time for the next thing. And I think I will listen to it and go like, whoa, I don't know. And I'm like, I encourage you to prove me and us, my gen, wrong.
Yeah.
Go for it.
What is, from what you're noticing just in Christian music or worship music, what do you see as the next thing? Any sort of like, I don't know, ideas or prophetic insights into the future, Alexander?
Well, I do think we're ready for a new something. I look back at Young and Free and be like, man, that was crazy because of just an intersection of culture and pop music and all this stuff. But
Right.
I do think we're ready for the next, for a next gen to step up. And maybe they're already doing it and I don't know about it. There's a lot of incredible worship music out there.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've really sensed in my spirit is the church is hungry for high praise
Mm.
anywhere I go. The difference between songs that talk about my devotion and my willingness to, Lord, I give you this, like, Lord, I will give my whole life to worship you, is great. And there's a place for it. But I do feel like there is a hunger for more, where songs like Worthy of It All are just gangbusters in any service you go to, because
Right.
people just want, like, God is so big.
Mm.
Jesus is so amazing. I mean, the song I released kind of a couple weeks ago really came from, in a way, and even as much as that song, I wouldn't even call it falling under the category of high praise. We are desperate for truth. We are desperate for something real and genuine. This used to be what we said about high schoolers, right? You'd be like, oh, yeah, like young people want genuine. They can tell when it's
Yeah.
phony. They can tell.
Authentic.
Obviously, be it COVID, be it political landscape, and I'm definitely not here to comment on any of that. The world seems to be heading in quite the direction where 10 years ago it wasn't, it was kind of cool to be a Christian. Celebrities were wanting to be in churches and talking about God, and we are not there anymore. And so like it's kind of just like, okay, cool, the celebrity cultural church thing and what's cool and what's fun. I still want to eliminate distraction. I still want a great service. I
Yeah.
still want this it to sound good. Like all for the purpose of eliminating distractions so people can encounter Jesus. And people are hungry for authentic. And so whatever you can muster in your authenticity, in your songwriting, in your worship leading, I think that is what speaks the loudest. I genuinely feel like there is about to be something crazy on the earth. It feels like the pendulum is swinging quite far one way. And I believe in a King Jesus that claimed the victory in full. We're not in like a boxing match. Jesus isn't boxing the devil. Oh, who's going to come out on top today? Oh, I don't know. Like, no, Jesus won. And so
Yeah.
as I watch the pendulum swing, I'm like, man, I believe that the victory is Jesus's. I don't know if he's waiting for churches to get their act together. I don't know if he is waiting for revivalists to stand up and say, like, yes. But a year ago, I said a prayer. My spirit feels like you are about to do something significant on the earth. I don't know what a worship leader and a songwriter can play in that, but Lord, you have my yes. Whatever it is, you have
Love
my
that.
yes. And that was really what shaped everything I was working on like last year. But it was kind of crazy. It was like my song A Great Awakening came out almost exactly 1 year after I prayed that prayer. And it was kind of when it came out that I remembered that. That song is a gift to me. I don't even know how I mustered up the revelation I knew to be a part of writing something like that. I think something significant is coming. And what's so cool, I think, in revivals of the past, word just slowly spread through word of mouth because of technology. I think what we're seeing on university campuses around America, maybe it's just going to be things like that. And we're going to hear about it, like Asbury. Not to be controversial. Was it revival? Was it not? I don't care. People were getting saved. People's lives were getting changed. Call it whatever you want. That is what we are desperate for. People having life-changing encounters with God where they are
Right.
doing 180s. They are just turning around completely and going after Jesus. And so worship music that assists in that, because I'm so sorry, I'm droning on now too. And that
Love
is
it,
the
bro.
ADHD in me that
Keep
just tells you.
going.
And like, anyway, when I was 15, bro, let me tell you, to answer about worship music, I got to tell you about when I scraped my knee on my bike. I think one thing we're figuring out too, which is so massive, at least I'm figuring it out, and I think the word is like worship music, go with me on this, is a genre.
Yes.
Like worship music is a genre. Like
It's an industry.
anything it's an which let's put that to the side. Yes, it is. And it is absolutely, and it's sacred, but like it is not exclusively worship. It is a means to it. And this is my thing, is what I figured out. I'm like, worship music is practice, giving people the opportunity, whether your church likes this or not, giving people the opportunity to do free worship. Take a moment of space and, hey, in your own words right now, respond. And I've always been so passionate about those moments in a church
Yeah,
service.
me
Like,
too.
I don't know why. I feel like I felt the Spirit really move in those moments more than just singing lyrics. And why? And I just feel like it clicked for me. I was like, it's practice. It is, okay, cool. In the most non-distraction, safe setting, you've just sung about the goodness of God. Like, your goodness is it's running after me. Like, respond. In your own words, respond. It's never going to be easier to respond with worship than in this moment. And then this week, when you pop your tire, how will you respond? How will you respond as a worshiper? Cool. I'm so glad I practiced responding in worship music. Worship music for us is like, anytime I get up to lead worship now, my headspace is like, I am helping train people, and myself included, of how to be a worshiper, not
Yes.
just a karaoke worship singer.
Oh, dude, that's so good. And it's funny. I just posted a clip from a Bob Sorge interview that I did a couple of years ago. And essentially what he said was that we've lost the song of the people. He's like, we have the song of the songwriters, and we have the song of the worship teams, and we have the song of the stage, but we've sort of lost the song of God's people. And I love what he said. What he said was, we don't just want to have a bonfire on the platform. We want to have a forest fire in the congregation. And I was like, oh, dude, like preach that. But it's what you're saying though, where like worship music needs to move from just becoming sort of a vehicle of entertainment. And I understand music is fun, whatever, but it needs to
Mm,
give voice to people as they're encountering the presence of God. Like it should empower the church to rise up and to live for Jesus and to step into their destiny, to step into their calling, and not just
yeah.
be, hey, this is some fun music that we listen to, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it got me ready for the word. Like, which is great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great part, a great aspect of it. But
Yep.
it's so much more. That's
Bro, this
awesome. I'm fully stealing that bonfire and
take it.
forest fire.
I use it all the time, so take it. So so the Great Awakening, I guess talk to us a little bit more about like where that song came from. I even love like the artwork and everything. I don't know if that's George Whitfield or, you know, just like old revivals or kind of what you're referring to. Like, have you been reading on like studying revivals? I guess just take us into what really brought this song out.
Yeah. Candidly, it was my co-writer, a guy named Lachlan Holmes, who is the worship pastor at a church on the Gold Coast of Australia. And they're actually about to release a version of the song from their live recording in a couple weeks. And he brought the idea. He was reading a book about the great revivals of the past. So he was like, hey, what if we wrote a song that tipped the hat to great revivals of the past and then prayed, God, do it again?
Yeah.
And I was like, I love that idea. We got writing, we got playing. I'm sitting at the piano, and it was like the like you did. I was like, what if it was like a like you did on here, like the Holy Spirit moving me, like, oh, okay, yeah, it's cool. And like that felt stirring. And then we get to the chorus. And first thing that came out of my mouth was, God, we're praying for revival like the world has never seen. But at least the first song I heard that kind of really put language to revival was Spirit Breakout. And like, revival, we want
Worship
to see
Central.
your kingdom here. And I was just like, dude, yes, I'm all in on revival.
Yeah.
So when did that song come out? 2015? Maybe earlier? 14, 13? I don't know.
Probably.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
And I personally, as a writer, and I think many other songwriters or just worship leaders would relate, revival became a really big buzzword in songwriting. Young and Free called their second record Youth Revival because it was what we were praying for.
Yeah.
And like seasons of church life for us, we did a whole year of the theme was This is Revival. We were praying to see it in our own church. And we did like extended worship nights and midweek prayer things. And they were great, but what would be considered documented revival, we didn't see it.
Hmm.
And so I get to the song, I'm like, dude, I'm pretty fatigued about saying revival. Could we say something else? Is the truth of that moment. And, Lockie was just sort of like, oh, I mean, I really like it. And candidly, we were writing for their church initially. Like, I wasn't planning on releasing it at that point or writing
Yeah.
it for me. And man, I really felt in that moment like the Lord reminded me. He was just like, hey, this is a Jericho moment for you. And you can step into faith or you can walk away and you won't see it fall. And so my encouragement to anybody listening or anybody that else is also feeling like, man, I have stirred up my faith so many times for revival and not seen it. And I'm disheartened and I'm disappointed, that I would encourage you, like, I I still haven't seen it. And I don't know if this song can do anything in moving the needle of revival, but I do believe that there are these moments that are pivotal. I love in Joshua chapter 6 when Joshua gets the command of what they are to do before the angel of the Lord even tells Joshua what they're going to do, that they're going to do something so silly as march and then shout to make stone walls turn to rubble. He says, behold, I've already given you the city. Maybe the Lord did something that the frequency of their shout and their ram's horns simultaneously made walls fall to the ground, or it was just stepping into agreement with the word that has already been spoken. Us as believers in this world that the pendulum feels like it's swinging so far the other way. Hey, I won't agree with that word that the enemy is winning in this war. No,
Yeah.
I agree with the word that the Lord has the victory, that the blood of Jesus and the cross was complete
Yeah.
and it was final. That day, that was a Jericho for me. And I was like, all right, Lord, I'm stepping into agreement that like the victory is yours, that revival is possible.
Yeah.
And I agree. I agree
Yeah.
with your word.
I feel like pursuing revival and believing for a new move of God is that's incredible. Like we should be doing that. In our passion for revival, we can't miss sort of the daily revival that is happening kind of in the mundane too. You know what I mean? I think
Yes.
sometimes with our eyes set on like big, we can miss, you know what? I shared Jesus with a friend today, or I met somebody and felt a prompting of the Holy Spirit, and God used me in this small way. And maybe revival is the big and the massive, but it's also a collection of a lot of small things and
Yeah,
small people just doing supernatural things every day in the everyday. You know what I mean?
totally.
And so, just to encourage our listeners, let's pray for that move of God. But also, God might be answering that prayer with, okay, here's what I want you to do today.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
totally. I think
Yeah.
Pappas's take on it is all right. We live in the the instant generation, right?
Yep.
I have been reading, especially we referenced Azusa Street. I was like, I better know what
Yeah.
happened at Azusa Street, at the very least, Azusa Street. And then it just like happened so like casually. A preacher that came to LA to preach and they didn't agree with one of his theologies. You can't preach here. So
Yeah.
some of like the people of the church, like it seems like it was begrudgingly invited him to their house to just start preaching. And it started there and it broke out like they wouldn't believe. And it's so cool. I almost think that we're like, yes, God, bring revival. Like, let it sweep through this nation. You do it. Our prayers are kind of like, you do it. And to
Yeah.
your point,
We'll watch.
I think the Lord, yeah, yeah, like, oh God, I can't wait. Like, I would love to lead worship at your revival service, Lord. Please roster me on PCO. Like, and like, maybe that's going to happen. Or maybe, maybe it's going to be months, years, decades of us sort of just being like, of a personal revival of like, hey, God, don't dumb down what you want to do to my level of understanding. Lift my understanding up to
Yeah.
your standards. Like in these years, I'm going to go on the day to day journey of praying for revival in my
Yeah.
own life and praying for, like, man, I would live a lifestyle of worship. And then who knows? Maybe something crazy will happen. Or maybe it'll just be like, man, a generation of people that figured out what a lifestyle of worship is and rejected the instantaneous world that we lived in. And maybe at the end of our lives, we go like, man, it seemed slow, but that was revival.
Yes.
I don't know. In
I'm
Jesus'
with
name.
you. In Jesus' name. Bro, I want to close with this. Have you get a little practical with us just in terms of songwriting. What I love about your writing is, I mean, a lot of things stand out, but probably the main thing that stands out is your sense of melody. And I feel like melody can be just challenging when it comes to worship songs, right?
Mm,
Because when you're writing a worship song, you want to just get, like we had talked about, robust theology. And how can you make this theology like sound good, like the phrasing of
yeah.
it and the melodic arc, like the stuff that you've written is just so dang catchy, like it just sticks in your head like forever, man. And so I'm just, take us into how you approach melody, or what are some techniques that you use to generate melodic ideas for songs.
This is going to seem like a lame answer, but is honestly the truth, is I actually spend a lot of time free worshiping. And
Dude, why is
and
that a
I'll,
lame answer? That's like the best answer ever.
and I mean, but that to say too is I get super, super frustrated at people in free worship, in my opinion, nothing on platform should appear unprepared. I'm not saying rehearsed, but unprepared. And when you have a moment of silence and you just go, one, we're sitting on the one, and you're like, Jesus, we love you. We love you. Oh, we love you. In some context, that's great. But I also, for me, I'm like, oh, you had nothing to say. Like you
Mm.
didn't consider anything to say and you didn't even try. So like if you're ever in a rehearsal with me, like I am practicing something in rehearsal that like to an extent of a variation that I'm like, I want to sing this. Like I read this week that I cannot wait to sing over the church. Like
Mm.
I received this word that I cannot wait to sing it over the church. And because I'm a songwriter, I'm like, I can do better than sitting on the tonic. You've been faithful. And man, so I really strive in those moments to bring I try to bring like a creative melody in free worship as well as what is real and revelation.
So
And
you rehearse those kind of spontaneous moments to a certain extent.
I call it putting it just in the quiver, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there are some things that I've potentially in free worship, like in some degree, like it's never really exactly the same. Um, it's because I am spontaneously responding to what I feel like needs to be said, but call it a well, call it my arrows. This is what needs to be sung over people today.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nothing at all related to anything I've got, and it's just like I feel the spirit like leading me there. But I do think music has the ability. I read this in a book called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools by Tyler Staton. It's an amazing book,
Good
amazing
book.
resource if you are just trying to figure out prayer. And but he at one point talks about, you know, music and worship music, and he says worship music has the ability to connect emotion with intellect. And you know, plenty of people would love to go like, "Oh, churches use music to manipulate you," like blah blah blah. And I'm like, I couldn't disagree more. Music enhances the point of what you are making. It makes you
Yeah.
feel beyond just receiving it. It makes you feel it. And like, oh, I'm sorry, are we not emotionally driven beings?
Right.
Like, I
There's a
totally
difference
disagree
between
with,
like emotionalism and showing
yes,
emotion. Like worship is emotional. If you're not showing
yeah,
emotion in worship, I don't know if you're actually worshiping, you know?
correct. And so for me, it is just like, even in those moments of free worship, I want to bring something melodically and lyrically that moves the hearts of man in that
Mm.
service. And so, and I have written so many songs that started like that. I'll get off stage and be like, and there are plenty that I'll feel like that was for the room, just for the room. I think that was cool, but I feel like the Lord being like that was for there. I'm like, okay. And other ones I get off stage, I'm like, man, I want to write a song like that. I want to write a song to that. And so a lot of songs, whether they started in a service or they start where I sit at my piano and I'll do free worship and then be like, man, I got nothing. And I'll change the key on the piano and start a new progression and like kind of just pulling from what I've been praying about, what I have experienced. And but yeah, like I definitely naturally, as I said, are like a lover of pop music. I'm like, okay, how can I make these melodies not boring to me?
Yeah.
But like they do primarily start, all that to say, coming back around in like free worship.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, there's a couple things to take away there. Like you said, like you love pop music, right? So you've immersed yourself in a lot of pop melodies, right? And
Yeah,
so over time, that sort of gets in you. I've just listened to Matt Redman and Tim Hughes and old school 90s vineyard worship. Like that's what I cut my teeth on. So that's just what
yeah,
naturally comes out of me. So what you immerse yourself
yeah,
in is what you will naturally come out of you. And you can even use that to challenge yourself. Like, hey, if you want to expand your melody writing a little bit, like listen to more pop music, study it, try it out, you
Yeah.
know? And then the free
Yeah.
worship side of things is just huge. You know, I think sometimes we can get a little too intellectual in our writing when we just need to get in God's presence and just go for it, you know? So, bro, so I want to ask you this, and I'll let you go here in a second, I promise. But if you, I've asked a couple guests this, if you had to, like in 5 minutes, create a 3 song worship set, okay? 3 songs. One of them is a song that you've written, and 2 are not songs that you've written. What would your set be?
Right now.
Right, like in 5 minutes, like you're going downstairs into the lobby and you are leading that hotel in worship.
Okay. Okay. Good question. Good question. I think I am gonna go with start with a Great Awakening. Bigger intro, stronger, kick from the top. Song one.
Okay. Yes.
My song of 2023, like what year is it? 2023 was More Than Able. Just
Yep.
I love that song. And I'm gonna bring it home with who it's a toss up between my initial reaction was Goodness of God to send it home, stay in the key of D for both, but I'm like, ooh, did I hit my like high praise? And I'm saying no. So I'm scratching
Okay.
Goodness and going with All Hail King Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
One,
Why
two,
all hail
three.
King Jesus?
Well, I would look at that set and be like, I've talked about I've danced around in Great Awakening, in More Than Able, like you are more than able, like this. But
Yeah.
have I just given a moment of like high praise?
Release the
And
valve.
that's where I would, yeah, that's where I would lean towards. Like, man, let's just go. No dancing. Like, obviously, I'm not being critical. Like, I'm trying not to be. Like, I think all these songs give voice to his greatness and his goodness. But like I said before, I think there is a hunger for that. Like you said, take the valves off. Like,
Yep.
just no skirting around. Like, oh, we're basically saying that. No, like I want to make sure I say it that you are worthy of all praise. Like, all hail King Jesus.
Dude. That song's one of my favorites, man. And it's strange that I've led it a couple times, but probably not enough. But every time I
Mm,
hear that chorus, "All Hail King Jesus," like I just lose it, man. Tears. It's just like
totally.
it's so good.
Yeah.
Alexander, what so much fun, man. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I want you to let our listeners, what do you want to leave them with in terms of what you have going on? Sounds like you're on the road. You have a new song out that we've talked about called The Great Awakening, so everybody needs to go and listen to that song. Add it into your PCO worship sets for this weekend. I'm telling everybody right now to do that. It's a great song. But what's upcoming? Are you working kind of on a full length record right now? Like what's next for you?
Um, yeah, I'm on the road at the moment. We're doing these like it's like small town like worship nights. Like the whole point is to be in small towns for the people that live a little bit outside of it, and that's really cool. It's been a really special little run. I am working on a project that is it will be called in all its many forms, which there will be a few, it'll be called Sunday. I'm working on what I believe I feel the Lord. So no one steal that idea, please. But songs that I really feel strongly that I'm, right now meant to bring of just songs for your church to sing on Sundays, and A Great Awakening is one of those. But my heart in all that is, as you listen to A Great Awakening, as you listen to any of those songs, is simply this. I'm really passionate about the gift of faith, that it is listed as a spiritual gift. And we love to talk about the more attractive gifts like healing and prophecy. Like those are wild spiritual giftings. And we forget that faith is also a gift. And any spiritual gift needs to be stewarded and prepared and a flame essentially to be stoked. And then, so I'm not going to get into too much, but I pray that these songs help you in exercising your gift of faith. And
Mm,
as you approach leadership, as you approach songwriting, as you approach life, that you would be a worshiper that exudes the gift of faith.
yeah, love that. Bro, thanks for your time today. This was a lot of fun. Lots to take away from this. And man, all the best as you continue to hit the road and write, and excited for what's next.
Thank you, bro. It was great chatting to you, man.